Well, hello, everybody, anybody that is watching. I appreciate you being here. I know there's probably nobody here yet, so. But someone will probably watch the rebroadcast of this, so we'll formally introduce our new live streaming capability here on Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Technique channel, afforded by a brand new connection to the internet by fiber optic that we are super excited about because it can finally offer us the ability to stream something legitimate, something real that is not choppy, and or at least to the minimum. No internet's perfect, I don't think, but we're not dealing with a really troublesome connection that I had in another way with another provider that shall remain nameless. But let's do some graphing. So, change some screens around here and get acclimated a little bit more. This is our very first of this kind of live broadcast for this channel. And if you've stumbled upon this video, well, I'd just like to express right now my deepest gratitude that you stayed for a second and are starting to check out what we're saying. And that you'll stay tuned and see what we got to offer here. If you're familiar with this channel, you'll know, and you play guitar, of course, you'll know what we probably offer already, or what I offer. I say we a lot. I think it's an internet thing. As I talk here, I'm not doing what I need to do. I need to click over to my OBS screen so I can see myself in real time. YouTube's broadcast is a couple seconds delayed. So, hopefully you guys can hear my voice. I'm going to try to crank this mic up maybe just a touch. Hello, check hello. Okay. You can let me know if there's any sound audio quality problems. And so what we can do today, what you can do along with me, is grab your graph paper, which, by the way, you can download at this website called Incomtech. I should post it in the description down below. You can download printable graph paper online. Just search free graph paper. It's everywhere. So get your graph paper ready if you don't have some handy. 88 cents at the store. Get a ruler, get a straight edge of some kind, use another pencil. Grab yourself a pencil, which, of course, I didn't grab before I went live. Here's one. Thank God for cups full of pencils and colored pencils and things. Have some things to color with. You can even use mechanical pencils, work pretty reasonably. I prefer the thicker, kind of the adjustability of just a regular number 2 pencil. I like pencils. And highlighters work well too. But they kind of solidify your ideas. At least, if you make a mistake, you can erase it with this pencil jazz here. So, let's do some graph in here. What can we do? Should we draw a fretboard today? 24 frets. You want to know what 24 frets is? It's about 6 exact inches. If you get 4x4, by the way, use 4x4 ruled paper. 5x5 is a little small for what we're doing. So here, I don't believe. Oh no, I don't believe you. So Frank Zappa there, if you caught the relate. Okay, I just created some room here that I needed to slide this ruler over, and if we've got from 0 to 6 in this viewable area, then we've got the camera set up right here. And we do. Great. Alright, I think I'm going to choose there. And I know that if I start at this line, at the 0 point, and graph all the way over to the number 6, I have just created 24 fret capability with the 24 squares. So let's go straight up from there. 6 boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and this should be our top line. And once again, we'll go from 1 to 92. No, not 92. That was from Chuck E. Cheese. Kids from 1 to 92. Anyways, no, never mind. It was like in a song, but we'll go from there to there. And we've got 24 frets of a guitar fretboard, a theoretical mind's eye fretboard. We're going to seal off the end near the guitar pickups. We'll even draw a guitar pickup for you. Look at that. It's off screen, so can't see that mess anyway. So here we go. We'll draw the nut, and I'm going to scooch over here because I like to draw this one just a little bit beyond the line, and here's why. Draw another line right on the line. Well, after that, and then I can just kind of shade in that area without blocking the boxes too much, and that gives you more of a visual. Sorry about that. A visual on the nuts of the guitar. You can orient yourself a little better, and we're going to write in our note names here just for reference. We got E, A, D, G, B, and E. You may or may not have to do that. And for this handy reference, I'm going to draw in some fret dots. And what you want to do with these fret dots is draw those on the line, because that's not where you think for your guitar stuff. That's for your fret markers in this, and it just makes it nice and symmetrical and giving it the appearance of a guitar fretboard. Done this a few times, so it was the best in my eyes to keep these dots out of the way but visible in your charts. So we start with, of course, 1, 2 on the 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret, and we know we've got to skip 2 to get to the 12th fret, and I usually put those on the edges here to really associate to your eye that this is the 12th fret. And everything you really need to learn is in between this point and this point, because it all repeats itself between here and here. Same thing. Just a higher an octave. So here's the symmetry of music starting to show up here. We've got a whatever 2 we started with here, 2 there to get to our odd numbers again, and we have 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, and at 24 we have created our monster. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Okay, so now what do we do? What do we do? We'll check the guitar sound. Some distortion and maybe a little too much reverb there for the room. Here's a nice acoustic sound. Or should I say just a clean sound. Okay, so kind of holding on here for anyone to, maybe one of my subscribers goes, oh my gosh, this dude's live, let's hop on. But at the same time, it is 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, and it's kind of an unusual time to be live, so it's probably better on a weekend, and also better when I let everybody know that I'll be going live whenever I can, like usually in the evenings, Eastern time, Eastern time zone. Okay, so what we could go over today is a couple things. We could go over like jamming in modes. Basically, I could say I got the question right now. What is a mode? How does a mode work? And show you that. I can show you how to jam with live modes on. Why don't I do that? Well, I'll just do everything. Okay, here we go. This is what we're going to talk about. I want to show you first something about modes. Here's what I want to show you guys. I want to show you guys that playing in modes and trying to think about it like as if your solo is going to be what's creating the mode is wrong. It's not going to work for you. And maybe you can work out an explanation that way. For example, in classical guitar, they'll tell you a very straightforward definition of a mode in a scale, in terms of a scale, would be playing a major scale from one of its other points other than the root. Like, for example, the C major scale, the root of a C major scale is, well, C. And if you played it from any of the other notes in the C major scale, C is all the whole notes, so we pick a D, pick an E, pick an F, and play from that note to that note again an octave higher, and then scale it back down to the first F. You've played from F to F, and you've played the fourth note to the fourth note and back. You've suggested Lydian in that movement. But that's not really what's making a song Lydian. And it's not because it's not what's making a song Lydian, you don't have to think like that as a guitarist. Here's what I mean. When you're jamming in a band setting, it's not just you. You're not just sitting up there. Very rarely are you going to see just one guitar sitting there with no other music playing, just a guitar. And if you do, it's probably an acoustic, which is a totally different ballgame of sounds and the things you do with it. But as a soloist, a lead guitar improviser, you're going to be with a band. There's going to be backing tracks. There's going to be background sounds suggesting things that your solo is moving through, is calling and responding to. Make sense? And if it doesn't, well, there's where you ask questions. Shoot questions into that common area. But let's say you understood that. Or let's say you didn't. Let me get right to the point and say that it's the chord of the moment that creates the mode. So, like, for example, if I simply begin, I can elicit a mode and start to make it somewhat into interesting music versus just playing some notes in a scale like this. Here's what you get when you hear that. You may not realize, at least this is what I have realized about my own listening abilities. I've often wondered, like, okay, so here I am, I can play something that's somewhat musically relevant. Doesn't sound that bad. It doesn't sound like I just went... Didn't sound as obtuse as that, which would be harder to kind of make musical sense to just an average listener. If a passerby walked by, they'd say, okay, that made musical sense then. Didn't sound as random, sounded like someone knew what they were doing, but there was no real inherent draw. There was no major music there. So what you learn as a guitar player when you solo and learn soloing is great, but you often wonder where the music is. Why aren't you really... What's that step to making that solo, to just making those chops jump out like something as cool as Joe Satriani? How come when Joe Satriani's playing these chops, there's so much more pop to it? There's this solo just jumps out of the music. It's about the music behind it. So if I play a chord in a scale, a major scale, over that chord, that begins to elicit the mode. So, like, for example, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play one scale, but I'm going to play two different chords. The thing I'm going to do is on my looper, I'm going to play two different chords that belong inside the scale that I'm playing. And what I want you to just try to sit back and just kind of hear what those notes are doing with a chord. And if you're really new to this and you don't know what's going on musically, you really might hear that it sounds like I've changed notes when these chords change. That like I found a whole new palette of notes to solo with, and wow, how does this guitarist do that? And where does this music come from? And how do you know what notes to play over what chord? And here's what you really know. When it comes to modes, the chords make the mode. So as soon as the chord changes, for example, I'm going to play the 1 and then a 2. I'm going to play the C, the 1, and then I'm going to play the 2, the D, which is a minor chord. So we're going to go from major to minor. And when you hear that, you might notice that there's a distinct change in the flavor of the music. And that'll sound to a layman's ear like, wow, how did they just make all those changes? The soloist must really know what he's doing, when all the soloist is doing is just making the same exact jam in the same exact pool of notes. Hasn't changed a thing, but maybe has changed somewhat of the notes that you're drawn to in your phrases, to end your phrases and to begin your phrases on, and to accentuate in your phrases, and to lead to in your phrases, and to call and respond to in your phrases. So that being said, let's give that a shot here. Let's get something going here. I'll get some drums to make it a little more musical. Give it like 4 bars, 5 bars, 8 bars, something. Let's do 8. I haven't hit record yet, so this is going to go on for a while. Just waiting to get around to that 1 beat. Oh, you know what I got to do first? I got to erase something really cool that I just played a couple seconds ago that I probably shouldn't have erased, but here we go. Okay, I'll try that again because I think I accomplished my mission. But I was looking for a new tone when the mode shifted over, and I really wanted to play right through the change to hammer it in there a little better, but I'll get back to the sound I was at. I like that sound. Alright. It's probably a little loud for you guys out there, but let me know in the comments if that's just blasting on your end. Turn your damn speakers down. Okay, just kidding. Let's try this again. Here we go. Two, three. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ionian. Major Ionian at rest. A little more tension with Dorian. So here's where things can get a little bit, I don't want to say argumentative between people, just whereas the progression I just played started on a C major chord. Okay, started on a C major chord. And went to the 2, the D, and then seemed to kind of keep gravitating back to the 1. So because it started on the 1, went somewhere else, and gravitated back to the 1, you could say overall that progression is in Ionian major because it's a 1 traveling to a 2, going back to a 1. Dominant, where the function, I guess, the dominating function there is the 1. However, by my ear, the sound sounds very major and happy when you're playing over this chord. Takes on that bittersweet tone when you're playing over the 2 chord, which is what the Dorian is. It's kind of like a lighter major than the more serious Aeolian and the super serious Phrygian. An example of me riffing around in a Phrygian sense, playing the Phrygian scale shape. It was actually a coincidence while I played the number 3 chord, which would be the 3 being the 3rd mode of the major scale. As long as I play the C major scale, but I play an E major chord, an E minor chord, before I confuse the hell out of everybody, becomes a, all you gotta do. This is what I should show you guys. You know what I should start with here before? See this? While I try to explain this to people, I keep on thinking back to the people who are just coming from nowhere and don't understand what the hell you're talking about and who really need it to start from scratch. And then I keep thinking about the people who are probably looking at what you're saying going, okay, I know that. Now what's next? So I'm trying to make it more advanced and more simple at the same time. So why don't I start with simple and work advanced? Okay, that makes a little more sense. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you guys a cheat sheet. And of course, since, oh, good, any good scales for 80s hair metal? Thank you, Vergard. All right, any good scales for 80s hair metal? Well, here's the deal. This is what you should do. Check out 80s hair metal that you hear. Learn a couple songs and graph them out. See that they're all primarily in a major scale. I don't think. When I think of 80s hair metal, I'm thinking like just, your Winger, your Dokken. I would say probably in a sprinkle of those tunes you're finding like harmonic minor scale. And let me tell you about that in a second. I got a whole bunch of things to add here. You're finding the harmonic minor scale. But a lot of times, it's not even the harmonic minor scale. They're just jamming in perhaps like a major. But I had a little bit of harmonic minor in there just by doing a little classical touch by sliding down a note that I know works. It's called the blue note. Look it up. I don't mean that in a rude way. I just meant, that's out there to find if that didn't make any sense when I said the blue note. But that's pretty much add that note in plus the major scale, and you've got you're playing any 80s hair metal. And then the final thing I wanted to add about the harmonic minor scale, that's perhaps if you're in a little more hard rock, 80s hair metal, a little more serious rock, like if you're getting this like some Triumph or something, or something like that, and maybe a random Scorpion song, or anyways, Blue Oyster Cult, but that wasn't really hair metal. That's just kind of the end of 80s hard rock. So I say hair metal wasn't really huge for me. I remember in the era, that's all I listened to, Rat and stuff like that. But anyways, playing the major scale will work. Just learn how to actually get a good hair metal tone on your guitar, and learn how to just kind of like to basically speed pick pretty good and alternate picking, and you'll grab a lot of that stuff. When you learn the major scale, you're learning one of the most kind of complex patterns, scale patterns. And what I mean is that once you see that geometrically, how it lays out on the fretboard, there's a little complexity to it, but once you get it, you can understand it. You'll notice that when you graph out a harmonic minor scale, it's very, in one shape, they look kind of awkward. But as soon as you graph it out over the whole fretboard, you see it's a repeating geometric pattern. I've noticed that the melodic minor and the harmonic minor both do that. We're talking definitely future videos there once I get really good at broadcasting live here. We'll graph out the harmonic minor scale. We'll kind of see how symmetrical it is. But great question, by the way. I really appreciated that. Do I have any hair metal I can play? Nothing that would, I really shy away from playing any music, copyrighted stuff on this channel, because as soon as you do that, they demonetize your videos. They detect you're playing Atlantic's music that they make money from, and you cannot do that without special payments to Atlantic. Okay, I'm just making that up. Or Warner Brothers, or whoever the hell. But anyways, so the code, let's start with the basics, but I do have to take a break here in a second and go tend to some things in the kitchen. Let me give you something to ponder here. So one of the first things you want to do with your graph paper is graph out something like this. Forgive my big hand in the way here. Take 12 squares and focus on them. So what you want to start with, what are the basics of music? 12 notes of the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep, glad I counted. One short to 12. 13 is going to be the same as this. You can always think that there's another 12 this way and another 12 that way. Just like on a what keyboard? Yes, a piano keyboard. Octave. This is a lower octave range. Okay? The same notes in a lower range, the same notes in a higher range. Here is your standard range of 12 tones of the major scale. Now, between an octave and an octave, which is the same frequency doubled, since it shares the same wavelength, exactly doubled mathematically, we consider that in our human musical measuring standard to be a repeat of the exact same note. It's just like an interesting little physical tidbit you should know there. If you haven't already figured something as basic as that out, everything repeats. It's mathematical. So we've divided the sound, the one raising kind of tone, since I couldn't do that on an instrument. Oh, here, that would have been better to do this. So in between, say, here there were more divisions than just 12. You could have had a 56 scale. You could have had a 1,000-degree scale. You could slice that up into infinite particles. But at some point, the particles get so close together, they're not distinguishable, and it's not making sense to the human ear that that was 8 different notes. No, it was just simply one note in our scale. Our division of 12 makes them makes each note pretty definable, and it also does some other things. It starts to create the music. It actually becomes very interesting when you divide things into 12. It creates a pattern of music, and it's kind of weird that this would be the number 12. It's kind of like, what do you divide the year up as? 12 months. 12 hours of a day. So many 12s out there, it's crazy, right? So, the 12 days of Christmas, right? Alright, so these 12 notes now are all you need to know everything about Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Prince, Pink Floyd, Madonna, Frank Sinatra, Cake, Tool, Nirvana, Air Supply. Trying to pull out of every genre here. LL Cool J. Pretty much all you have to know any of those songs is know the major scale. Look how much it can do. Look how many genres. Look how much country music is made, and rock, and hard rock, and heavy metal. And, well, we may step out of this range in heavy metal, but some of the stronger genres are stepping out of the major scale for sure. But for the most part, I mean, country music, huge in the major scale. And pop music, oh my god, in the major scale. And progressive rock, big time in major scale modes and stuff like that. So tons of genres, making mad use, milking this thing for what it's worth. Very valuable. And there's more music to come. So let's get down into turning you into that next popular musician that knows the basics here. In this division of 12 notes, let's start by actually not doing what I'm doing there. Let's just start giving them a name. I'm going to erase this, because I messed up what I wanted to show you there. Let's step out of the game. This is what you want to do. Hopefully you can, if you catch this video right now, just rewind it when it's done being live. And follow it from the beginning. Let's give this one an A. We're going to skip a note there. I'll show you why in a second. And then we're not going to skip a note. And I know that's weird, but there are a whole bunch of deep reasons about why this was chosen to be this little pattern to make. We could have just went A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. It would have been note L. And very basically that may have made sense, but it wouldn't lead into the structures of music that we know today. It's a pretty handy way to structure the tones, because the tones, as you start to create music that you like and you analyze it, the tones begin to take forms. They begin to have uses. Like these uses will have names in the classical culture of classical music, known as like subdominant and tonic and mediant and submediant. And so these tones all have a little work, a little job to do. And so they were named, basically the whole names were given to like the most workhorse notes. Notes that also corresponded with each other. So here's another way I'm going to put this. If you start out on an A, you get a very straightforward sounding scale. And I believe before Ionian major came into focus as the real popular scale, this very serious, straightforward sounding scale was the first thing basically mapped out, and therefore that's why I got the A note here instead of the common major scale, which would have put the A note starting here. You'll see that later, but when eventually you come to that point where you realize, well, why the fuck is everything that uses these tones start on C? Why didn't they just make it A? Well, that's sort of the reason. If your mind gets hung up on that, go back to that reason. But if you can just get past that, you don't technically need to really worry about that. It's hard to get over that in the beginning when you don't know you don't know what it is like over the mountain. The hurdle, the mountain is that obstacle between you and being able to improvise and understand modes like nothing. Until you get there, this seems like, something you're really going to need to know, something that's going to confuse you for the rest of the way, but it's not. Just trust that this is how it rolls. Now, let's talk about this. What actually are we seeing here? What am I making a big deal over? Well, what you're seeing is skip a note, don't skip a note, and we're going to call a skip a note a whole step, and we're going to call a don't skip a note a half step. So you have to remember that. That will come up all too often until that's, like the back of your hand. So whole step, half step, whole step, half step is what you got as a pattern here. If you wanted to make a simple scale of 7 notes, or maybe just people found out after experimenting with these 12 that, it's a whole bunch of, you just play all 12. It just sounds like garbled whatever. You're playing a whole bunch of tunes that are just notes that are just pretty random. So, what we got to do here is organize these into 7 strong tones together that make up something that pulls, your sound from one end to the other. So let's start on A and play that. As you can see, compared to just playing, you can walk up the scale, sounds like you're doing something, but when you play just the notes listed, it actually sounds like something. And if we mess up one of those notes, it doesn't move as smooth. gives it a different sound. It might sound somewhat appealing if you're in the mood for that, but otherwise, it's not as straightforward. This is probably your most straightforward grouping or way to move from one end to the other and sound pretty much. Now let's actually group them more evenly. Let's go every other one. Make it a little more symmetrical. Why wasn't music symmetrical? Let's see. Sounds bad, but it sounds kind of ambiguous, and we know that today as the whole tone scale. If you want some great use of the whole tone scale, look for the game, the classic, very ancient old arcade game, and I'm talking ancient from like 1980, called Crystal Castles. That made great use of the whole tone scale. Anyways, so there's some reason about what we're seeing here. Since we're gonna agree that that's a good way to mark out these steps here for those to make 7 out of 12. Let's give a name to these notes in between. And what we're going to do is make an A there and a B there because it's in between A and B. We're going to call it A sharp and B flat. So that's why you never have a B sharp or a C flat, but you do have a C sharp and a D flat, and an D sharp and an E flat, and an F sharp and a G flat, and a G sharp and an A flat, and it repeats back to A. Got it? Get it? Now let's shade the off notes. Okay, let's do something else here. Let's start down here now and go from C to shining C. So here we would have G, A, B, and C. All right, and we're gonna just go and copy everything above, C, D, E. So remember that there's your 1, 2, 3, and then your half step for 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is where your musical knowledge starts taking shape here. Your knowledge of the major scale and how it applies to the music you love and improvising. By doing this, let's mark down here do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay? I know that sounds very basic, but be able to always go back to that reference point. When you get confused, you're always going to have to just try to be like, okay, wait a minute, where's the do, re, mi? Okay, it's here. Okay, here's the 4. Okay, here's this, blah, 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 blah. Now, so what we got here are note names. Well, here we got note names, right, with the sharps and flats. Now here we have a definition of a key. We call it C major in parentheses. So here we have the notes. Here you have a piano keyboard, which has, we're going to number these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, let's not worry about that yet. But anyways, it's piano keyboard. And once again, all of this starts mimicking the piano keyboard. You'll see that's the cool thing about a piano is you can see do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You can see your music theory right in front of you every time you have a question. Get a freaking keyboard because the answers are all right in front of you whenever you look at a keyboard. The thing is, with a guitar, they're not, and the dots mislead you to think, well, maybe those are like the black keys, but they're not, so it's just totally confusing until someone starts to set you straight on what music is, and then start to be able to graph it on your fretboard and see the pattern there, and everything links together, and you've got this. So, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So let's mark out these black keys. Even clearly now, it's really starting to look like a piano keyboard, huh? And now we understand why is everything in the C major scale. Why is this the major scale? Why is this do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do? Why is that here? Because do to re is the sound of a whole step. put another whole step after that, and that sounds a little more pleasing. A half step sounds sad, and I'm going to tell you why in a second, because this is the minor third, and this is the major third, and this is the important difference right here between happy and sad in any chord and in any scale. This is why thirds are so important to you musically. This is your definition between happy and sad in almost any given scenario musically, okay? So here you can see it's been chosen to be happy, so that makes a more happy scale, and by definition and sound of modern music, minor scale, using that minor third, is minor. And we know that the A scale, when you're in C, but you start from A, it makes a, look at that, flat third, minor. Okay, anyways, if that just flew over your head, doesn't matter. That won't mess you up. So here we have a 3, a 4, then the 5th, and the 6th, and the 7th, and back to the 1, the root. So let's fill it all in. 1, 2. Now let's going to erase this here, because what I want to do here is just give you the scale degrees. The neat thing about scale degrees is the information translates right into your intervals. See, what you're getting here is a little cheat sheet chart when someone says, well, the key is C. That's the do. It's the 1 chord. The C, but we're on the key of E, or we're playing an F chord, but we're in the key of C. Okay, you're gonna know that that's the fa and do, re, mi, fa. It's not something that's that important, but knowing that that's the 4th is very important. We're gonna learn which mode that is going down here. Let's get our intervals filled in here. We have the root. You have the flat second, the flat third, the 4th. See how they correspond? The flat 5th, once again, we correspond with the 5th, the sharp 5th, the 6th, the flat 7th, the 7th, and the 1. It's getting pretty easy to understand music theory, right? Give me a second. I'm going to be right back. I have a piece of delicious steamed fish for lunch in the steamer, getting oversteamed, and I got to take care of that because we don't want to lose that $5 piece of fish. Money's tight, nothing's free. Support me on Patreon. Okay, be right back. Well, here I am, back, eating food in front of you guys. Any of you guys eat keto? Vegan keto? You don't want to see all that? I look gross, but we're talking piece of steamed salmon, cauliflower, probably making you hungry out there, sorry about that. Broccoli, coconut oil, pretty damn good. Okay, back to the bump and grind here. I've only got a few more minutes here. I actually got some errands to run, so I'm going to have to tighten this up and leave you guys hanging for the next live episode of Mystery Graph Paper Theater. What do we got here? Where was I? What were we doing? I have no idea. Well, I do. I didn't forget. Can you read that there in... I didn't write that very good. Okay. I'll just have to get that written down a little better so you can read what the hell we're doing. Scale degrees and intervals. You need to know your intervals. Good thing to have handy for the graph paper method is a pencil sharpener time to time. Okay, here we go. After the intervals, what do we need to know? What could we know? What's a good thing to know? Well, let's know our... Whoa. Let's learn our modal names. Modes. So how can you transfer your scale degrees into modes? And keep this in mind, you'll need this at first. You draw this out. Spend some time doing it, because as you write things down, it does two things for you. It makes it real in your world, number one. Number two, it just takes it from like some kind of mental, floaty, easy to corrupt idea into something that's on paper. But eventually what will happen is this will retransfer into your mind. Once it's really solid on paper, your mind will lock into this and you won't need this paper anymore. But it really will take getting it all kind of laid out, let your mind see how it all locks together, get solid on things that never change, and roll with it. And when you get things that never change, imagine if the boards inside the walls of your house were constantly like changing. Can you imagine the cracks in the walls, the constant crumbling, the trouble, the really unworthiness? That place wouldn't be suitable as a house, place to sustain you. Well, same thing with music. If your logic of how to create music is constantly shifting and swirling, and it's not very artful, it's actually very chaotic and won't really lead you into making any meaningful music, where once you have a solid foundation and a good set of walls, you can create a house that gets painted beautiful colors and has beautiful artwork on the walls and has magnificent rooms and feng shui everywhere, and just all the great things that everyone knows could exist inside a structure. Here's your structure that's going to house all your beautiful music. Does it make sense to you why you learn music theory now? Or at least why you know a couple things about the basic definitions of the basically parameters of what's going on when you hear a song on the radio? Because let me tell you, one of the reasons... Did you ever notice that on classic rock radio, you hear basically, especially on certain... Well, okay, there's a lot of reasons for what you hear on classic rock radio. Numbers, what they think is popular, lame stuff, repeat stuff over and over, be familiar to everyone, all that jazz. But one qualifying thing that those people got to be able to be on that radio station in the first place was that their music was operating, doing unique things within that framework. And it's established. People know it when you create music that's got, you know, something about it. that's got validity to it, and there's some real structure behind it. All right, enough with the analogies. Modes of the major scale. So let's write down one letter in each one. We don't have room in the box to write down the name of these modes, so we're going to put the first letter of each mode, which will work, except for one little problem that I don't think turns out to be a problem. So here it is. Ionian for, well, I for Ionian. At the second note of the scale, a whole step away, at the 2, is Phrygian. No, just kidding. It's Dorian. Probably didn't even sound like I was kidding there. D and P for the third one is Phrygian. So we have P for Phrygian, right? Phy is how they. You're like, wait a minute, isn't that an F? Phrygian, right? But it's ph. Like Pharaoh, do 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 do. Well, I should map that out and see if that little melody is in. Anyways, we've got a half step away for our next one. You'll always find Lydian here, and we're going to use an L for Lydian. We're going to use a natural L, and you're going to find out why in a second. We're moving on to Mixolydian, and we're following our basic 1, 2, 3 stuck up against a 1, 2, 3, 4 pattern. And we have Aeolian, and we're going to use the A. And then we have our, to complete our 1, 2, 3, and 4 whole steps, we have our Locrian, which is going to lead us back into the Ionian. Now here's the deal. Root. Lydian and Locrian. You're going to confuse those all the time if you leave those both in L. But here's the cool thing about it. You will probably use Lydian a lot more. You'll single that guy out for some jazz more than you will Locrian. Locrian, each mode, each one starting using these ideas. The Ionian idea, let's call it an idea right now. We can't get into how it becomes that idea, but so we're just going to call it an idea. Making a Lydian sound, a Mixolydian sound, an Aeolian sound, all are different. That's why they're named differently. And they have like a different flavor. And the flavor is kind of separated between major and minor. Now, Locrian is in the minor category, but it also does something unique none of the other ones do, and it flats the 5th. If that doesn't make any sense to you, it doesn't matter. Let me get right to the point here, actually, to make something a little more sensible to the layman people, to the people coming from nowhere. This is very enigmatic. The flavor of this one is very unique, and it's questioning. It's confused. It's kind of not going anywhere. It just keeps leading back to itself. It doesn't really find home. It's always wanting to go home right there, because home is where the heart is, and home is one half step away from this. So you can use Lydian to just kind of like build tension before going here. Lydian has its uses, but it's very unique uses. These can be painted liberally. But this is like a color you'd only use for a trim piece or something, to put it that way. You'll think of some enigmatic or weird, or I think a song from Metallica is using Locrian. There's one of them, and maybe a couple other bands that are escaping me right now. But anyways, and not much. It's very rare. So what we do is we put an X there. Sorry, it just took so long explaining that it's rare, and because of that, we're going to put an X on that one, because we don't use it very much. Locrian with the L with the X. And a natural L is for Locrian. So that really distinguishes it in a very easy to manage in a box way. What's going on there? Locrian with an X. So one thing I thought of explaining while I was explaining all that is this. So let's take a look at here. 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of cool. Creates a little memorable pattern that'll come up over and over in what I teach. And one thing about it is this. So how did that really work? Why does that work to make a scale that leads back to itself? I got a quick explanation for you. let's just think of a whole step versus a half step. Why not? Why are we just doing a one note or a two note? Why don't we consider the three note and skip into a four note? You can consider those interval changes. However, we're going to give those a name. We're going to call those leaps, because basically you're leaping over the first most important step you can take, which is either a half step or a whole step. That's basically the most basic type of acceptable first step you can take. You could think it was just this one, but this is usually acceptable as a first step. Let's hear it right now on the keyboard. Oh, we have to have a sound plugged in. How about that? Here we go. Sounds like those notes are right next to each other, but technically this is the very next note. This is a half step away from this is C. This is a half step away. That's one step. Altogether they sound kind of awkward because you're putting two steps in there. If we just take one step, it sounds somewhat steppable, and this is people tend to think that this step actually sounds more agreeable than this step. They think that this has more what's called tension than this. So if you want to get your first idea of tension and release, you can just play a half step and then a whole step. You know, think about, in my mind, I think of Jaws, the scary part of Jaws. What are they trying to tell you there? You're in danger, warning, warning. And think about warning sounds on sirens and stuff. They're typically like this, and car alarms. More tension, trouble, warning. Now less tension. La la, stepping up. Sorry, we hit a bad note there. Stepping up. The king, royalty, stepping up. Everything's good. La la. Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot more agreement here than here. And that's what's going on here. Here's how you, if you're going to divide 12 notes and you want to lead people somewhere, you step in a good way, and then you step in a good way. So we got agreeable, but do, re, mi, fa. We add in just a little bit of tension early in the scale. That begins to suggest that, we may be falling apart here. We've got agreeable, agreeable, not so agreeable. But it's still not, because there's two things that are agreeable before it, it's not suddenly knocking it back to where it was. It sounds reasonably still agreeable. But we need to continue the agreement to stick with agreeable jumps and not the more disagreeable jumps. So we're going to F, G, A. And now we've gone there, but so many agreeables in a row begin to sound a little too agreeable, but it doesn't matter because right there we are one half step away from the beginning. And what does a one half step want to do once it's been so agreeable? Do you notice how once I played the C, that really sounded to like the thing just kind of landed back, perhaps home? So these half steps are the little engines that's making that little emotional thing happen. adding tension in certain places leads your ear. You just heard it happen. And that's all music is doing. You'll hear about the fifth a lot, because the fifth is the farthest note away. This one wants to go home the most. You'll hear of in jazz a 2-5-1, a 2-5-1, hanging out on the 2, going up to the 5, the most far away, and going back to the 1. 6-2-5-1. Starting out here in normal land, which we now know is kind of a more serious scale. We call that the minor scale. Going to bittersweet minor, then to bittersweet major, and then right back to solid major. Make sense to you? Okay. What you want to do is eventually, if you just heard me going bittersweet this, that, where did that come from? You want to take a separate sheet of paper. We'll do that next, and make that say major, minor, and have Locrian down here at the bottom as your enigmatic scale. And then for major, write Ionian, and then Lydian, and then Mixolydian. But I messed that up. We want to write, my bad. We want to write Lydian on top, even though Ionian comes first. We're going to write Lydian on top, and you need to see one of my other lessons that show you this in the guitar graph chart about how to make the pentatonic, make these show up in the pentatonic very easily, and how to always pull these out of a pentatonic scale just like that. It's very easy. But you have to watch another video to do that. But just go Lydian, and I'll show you this in that video too. And then here, write down Aeolian as the middle. And on top of that, you're going to write, on the bottom, you're going to write your Phrygian. And then here, you're going to have your Dorian as your minor modes. And these are your major modes. And this is your brightest. This is your standard. And this is going to be your... I like to call it like a bittersweet. So this is the brightest. This is going to be normal. Normal happy. The brighter happy. And this is going to be more, it's going to have a twist to it. That's what I like to say. It's got a little more tension. It creates like a little bit of a twist. It's got a little bit of a melancholy, a little bit. Now, speaking of melancholy, we've got normal minor. Just serious, could be somewhat sad, but just think serious, think Stairway to Heaven solo. We have Dorian, which is bittersweet. What's that song from Sting? Do 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 do. It took a day to build this city, walk the streets in the afternoon. Na, 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 na. What are the minds I made if I build this fortress around your heart? I think it's Fortress Around Your Heart. Do do do. Believe that's based in revolving around the 2 chord of its scale, Dorian. To give it that kind of sad but somewhat like sunshine through the mist and rain sound. Phrygian, this is going to be your more like your you could even say Latin or Egyptian, or serious with some evil or serious with a twist. Okay. I'm sorry. With that Locrian down here, I was writing off the camera, not even paying attention. Look at that. I've done that before, and I'll do it again. Make that list. Pause that there if you need to. Back to the bump and grind here. You've got your modes here. And I think there's even one more thing we can map out here, but it's kind of escaping me right now, but for all our intents and purposes, if we start making squares on the fretboard, the notes of this major scale, The thing with the guitar fretboard is what the fretboard used. The fretboard made use of these half steps. And the tuning is using these as its core principle of structure. It's using these as its structural principle. So, for example, if you were in the key of C, you'll always see that the B and the C and the E and the F make a square. Every major square has a scale, and to avoid confusion, if you're in the key of D, then it's like, well, wait, B and C and F aren't there. This is all confusing now. No, it doesn't have to be. All you need to do is utilize these to use this as any scale. Just consider this the R, or consider this the I, because it's Ionian. So you can, let's make a couple of guitar transfers here. We got root, and this is the 4, and this is your 3. This is 3, 4, 7R, because you got your 3, 4, and your 7R. Let's put that right here, right here, and right here. This is your half step area. We want to accentuate that to your eyes so you always remember where your half steps are. Because if you always think, and see, this is where people get lost in music theory, because if you only think about 12 to 12, you lose that link you need to see everything else. That remembering that it's not only about scales on their own, no man is an island. It's about scales and their relativity to other octaves that are always next to every scale. Repeats ad infinitum. I just made that up, but it repeats forever. Okay, so until, of course, you couldn't hear it anymore because the frequency would be too high or too low for your ear. Okay, all that jazz being said, we can make the exact same square of the exact same. If this was on a guitar fretboard somewhere, that would be your root. Your 4, your 3, your 7, and an R would be your Ionian note would be there. Your Lydian note would be there. Your Phrygian note would be there. And your Locrian note would be there, leaving out some things that always attach here. Mixolydian always attaches there, and Aeolian always attaches there. Who's the odd man out? That would be Dorian, is always the outbound constellation there. But there's some neat things there. You can think Adam here because oh my god, I really just fucked that up. Sorry. I'm glad you guys caught that. See, you guys are teaching the teacher now. That's really good. If you caught that I messed that up, the D is always the odd man out here. So here's how you got to know your constellation, your fretboard constellation, your square, and your D right there. Where's everything else? Your A and your M are always connected right there, and if they're not available there, your M is always here, your A is always here, and your D is always here. So you can think A, AD, and DM. Adam, right? Perhaps. And, or mad. I don't know. But whatever you do, it was very easy for me to memorize letters in these squares. And then for there, it was just so easy to go, okay, my 5 is always there. My 4 chord is the Lydian. It's always there. If I ever need Lydian anything, and I know my root is here, I know Lydian is going to happen here. I know anything Dorian is going to happen from right there. Anything involving the 3 chord is going to happen right there. The Phrygian, the me, whatever you want to say, whatever you need to reference. Okay, I hope I left you with a ton of really wickedly powerful information to take you new places on the guitar. By the way, there's everything I was just talking about for the last 10 minutes while you couldn't even see. While once again, like I said, I would write and not look at the screen and see what I'm doing. So there you go. I wish you guys well. I got to get out of here and run some errands that I'm now late for in the quest to give you guys a really bang-up live lesson here to attract some listeners to my new live broadcasts happening hopefully once a week. If you guys support my Patreon page, this will happen every day. I can give you live lessons. I can do everything. Okay. Have a great day. I really appreciated anyone who comes to watch this or anyone who is watching this now. And I don't think anybody is. Okay. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.